Life gives us enough hard crap to deal with. Why would we add more to it on purpose? Because that's how we grow. Today's guest on the DesuckifyWork Podcast, Luis Velasquez, should know. Luis was diagnosed with a brain tumor over 20 years ago. He was crushed, angry, and at one point, suicidal. Everything he had every right to be. Today, he is an incredibly successful executive coach, working with leaders from companies like Google, Salesforce, and more. His specialty? Coaching those deemed uncoachable by everyone else. How did he get here? He made a commitment to himself that he would not put his mother through the pain of losing him, that he would do all the things he knew in his heart he was meant to do, that he would fully show up for life, just like his dad did after suffering a devastating accident that left him in a wheelchair. If anyone deserves to write a book about resilience, it's Luis. And thank God he did, because it's wonderful. It's called Ordinary Resilience, and it reminds us that we all have access to everything Luis has demonstrated in his own life. It starts with a simple formula. Resilience equals commitment plus persistence times optimism. Optimism is a multiplier, because without it, we are simply grinding and on our way to burnout. There are 5 pillars to resilience. Embrace the suck, face your fears, build relationships, find inner strength, and solve for fulfillment. Notice he didn't say solve for merely existing. To keep the resilience muscle strong, we must embrace intentional discomfort. Because living through a brain tumor isn't enough? No. Because living through a brain tumor proved to Luis that he became someone better through that pain. So why wouldn't he invite more in? Luis's brand of intentional discomfort includes things like giving up coffee for a full year and running ultra marathons.
Yes, motherfucker.
You decide which of those sounds harder. Such a beautiful irony that we must embrace the suck to desuckify our lives. Let the desuckifying begin. Here's Luis. Okay, Luis Velasquez, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
Thank you, TJ. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for showing up, and I think we'll have a lot of good stuff to talk about. You've got a book, you've got a lot of great work you're doing, and maybe with that, I'll give you a chance just to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do and how you came to be doing it.
Okay, so what I do, I call myself an executive coach because that is the label that is most people will recognize.
Yeah.
But what I do is I help clients adapt and thrive. I work in the intersection of what people believe, what organizations believe are the success markers. What my clients believe they are successful at. And sometimes there is a gap between those two, and I help them to bridge the gap.
Well, that doesn't sound very easy. How do you do that?
It sucks. But it doesn't suck for me.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think that it sucks being in that gray area. A lot of times that suck happens over many years. It's like that narrative that people tell about ourselves, us. And sometimes all we need to do is to reposition ourselves. What I do, I help people I help clients adapt and reposition themselves. Some of the clients that I work with are considered difficult. Some of the clients that I work with are labeled difficult, toxic. So many labels, Sometimes it isn't their intent to be like. They just their action is not aligned with their intentions.
What is going on that allows their actions to not align with their intentions?
There are 3 things usually. By the time that this podcast is over, you will say, "Well, Luis likes number 3," because I always classify them 3.
Okay.
Number 1 is sometimes lack of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know the impact that they have on others.
Yeah.
Second time is they don't have the skills to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to treat people with respect, literally, or they
Yeah.
don't know how to be more empathetic. They don't have the skills. And
Mm.
sometimes what they do is that they don't see the need to do it.
Mm.
I'm here to do work. I'm here not to do friends. My job
Right.
is if I'm considered difficult, it's not my problem, it's theirs.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I think we all know folks who have shown up that way in our own experiences. I'm curious for you, like what helps someone in that position start to see the value of showing up differently?
I think that we all have aspirations,
Mm-hmm.
I say, there are three things that we actually want is A, we want power. B, we want influence.
Mm-hmm.
C, we don't want to lose face,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that a lot of times the people that show up like that, they are giving up their power. They are giving up their influence. They are giving up the power that they want to have, and they're giving up and they're embarrassing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's one component. The other issue is, I don't think that 99% of people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm gonna be a jerk today.
Right.
We don't.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions that I ask my clients is, what do you want to be known for?
Mm.
When you leave this organization, what do you want people to say about you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of the water cooler conversation that is happening about you?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more about you have to do this, but rather, what do you want to be known for? And that is incredible way of motivating people to move from where they believe they are to where they want to be.
Yeah, because it seems like it suddenly shifts your attention. Actually, it shifts your attention in two ways, right? Because one, it does force you to look inside, but it also plays to the fact that people care about what others think.
Totally.
And now they have to sort of confront the reality of that rather than the story that they've been able to tell themselves for a long time.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm curious for you. I mean, you're doing this kind of work, which sounds both challenging and rewarding. Have you had any work experiences in your life that were not so rewarding, that maybe were more on the suck side of the scale? And if so, are you willing to share what maybe one of your worst was?
The reason why I'm pausing is because I don't think that throughout my life, I have had an experience where the experience sucked.
Okay.
I think that what I have experienced is that the process of going through the experience sometimes sucks.
Okay.
And here is what I mean by that. I was a professor of fungal genetics at Michigan State University. That was my dream. I want to be a professor.
Yeah.
And the work there was very hard. You had to write grants and stuff like that. All of a sudden, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Okay.
That's
yeah.
So the job wasn't the what sucked is the events that happened when I was in that job. So when I came back from the surgery and the medication and all of that stuff, the doctor told me you have to accept the new reality. And your new reality is that you probably won't be able to go back to teaching anytime soon because I have some cognition issues, and or walk straight anymore. That sucked.
Yeah.
However, what I mean by that suck is that those are events that happen in my life, but they were not. They didn't define who I was or how I was going to approach the future.
Okay. So how did you approach that? I mean, I know you speak a lot about resilience, and you've written a book called Ordinary Resilience. And so when any of us hear somebody going through what you've mentioned you've gone through, that word feels like it ratchets up a few notches in terms of its meaning. How did you find resilience during that time, and what did you sort of learn in the process?
Let's just stay with the suck theme.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times we tend to try to avoid the suck. Or we try to run away from the suck or completely avoid it. And one of the pillars of my resilient book is actually what I call embrace the suck.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that, hey, this is where I am. And the situation where I am is what I have and what I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be like this forever.
Okay.
So the way I do it, the way I did it when I was, going through this is like I realized that, oh my God, this sucks, but this is not going to last forever. I want to do X. I want to be, X, and that allows me to look forward. And the idea of managing the suck, not avoiding it. This is something people laugh about it, is that the key is not avoiding the rain, but learning to dance in it.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that perspective. And I think, when I think about the idea of, desuckifying work or desuckifying anything, I think that's an important distinction, right? It's not to avoid anything that makes us uncomfortable, especially when it's a reality that is sitting right with us. But it is, how do we deal with it, adapt to it, grow through it, etc. And I don't want to sort of trivialize what you went through, but I have to imagine at the very least, there were maybe times that it wasn't clear to you how you would do those things. And what I wonder, and I know this is part of what you talk about with resilience, and I think why you call it ordinary resilience is it's not, you don't view it as a skill that you have to go out and kind of learn fresh. It's more like it's something in us that you bring forward. And so how does it come forward? How do you harness it? How do you put it out into the world? And how did that show up for you as you were going through the health challenges?
So as I was recovering and I was doing my thing, people will tell me, wow, you're so resilient. Gosh, how do you do it? How do you went through this? How do you come up, stronger than you were? And in my mind, I was thinking, I haven't done anything special. I'm not doing anything different. I'm just doing what it comes natural to me. So this book started as a reflection of trying to understand, what is it that I did? And by the way, my dad had the same experience too. He had a horrible accident, and he came up so much better after that, and so I had my experience and his experience, and I started like trying to understand it, what was it? And I remember very vividly, when my dad was in his wheelchair, and then, we were poor at that time. He simply said, I am going to build a house and I'm going to send you to the university. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And we laughed, and we said, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
You couldn't do it when you were healthy.
Right.
And now you're going to do it. But, he did it. And I think that, and I remember, hearing his voice, the commitment to do that.
Right.
And I think that for me was something that carry on. Also, when I was trying to understand, how is it that I do that? One day I was at the bottom of the suck,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact I was thinking about ending my life, and 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 I was thinking, how I was gonna do it rather than when,
Wow.
and then an image of my mom appeared in my mind, and I said to myself, I cannot do this to her. If I do this to her, she will suffer tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I'm sharing this is because at that moment, I made a commitment to get better.
Yeah.
The same way my dad made a commitment to make a business.
Mm-hmm.
So the key to desuckify our lives is to make a commitment about doing something about it. When I was a kid, and as I said, we were poor. Every time that I didn't like something, my dad will ask me a question, and his question is, "Well, what are you going to do about this?"
Yeah.
And that has been a mantra that I have had in my life, throughout my life. When I don't like something, my question is, what am I going to do about this?
Mm-hmm.
The moment I ask myself that question, then I start looking for solutions.
Yeah. The word commitment, as I hear it, I think, okay, I get it. I'm going to commit to myself that I am going to do something which will push me or inspire me or create energy in me to go then do it. But I think some people, and myself included, have known of times where maybe we've made a commitment to ourselves and we haven't followed through on it. So what needs to happen so that we honor the commitment we make to ourselves, particularly in those moments when we're struck by something that really makes life hard?
So as I said, when the question that you asked me, and I hijacked the conversation, I went somewhere else, and I want to pull it back. What is resilience? And I think resilience is an outcome, but it's also a process.
Yeah.
And to your point, the process it has three components. It's commitment times commitment plus. Gosh, I'm getting a little emotional here.
Okay.
Commitment plus I don't want to say endurance, persistence. Commitment plus persistence times optimism. And here is the way it works. You make a commitment. I'm committed to my wife. I'm committed to my children. That is an emotional contract that you make for yourself.
Yeah.
But the point that you make is that is not enough. How do I go through this? Then that comes the persistence. And persistence is understanding that life sucks.
Yeah.
And that the things that we're gonna do are not easy. Life is hard.
Yeah.
But the key here is that if we're not pushing ourselves, we're not growing. If we're in the comfort zone, we're not growing.
Yeah.
Everything that matters, everything that is important, requires work.
Yeah.
So commitment is, yes, I'm gonna do this. Persistence, I know that it's not gonna be easy, but I'm gonna, because I'm committed to that. It is the key. If you use those two alone, that is a recipe for burnout.
Okay.
All right. Going back to when you started the conversation, and I was telling you that I knew that this was temporary. That's where the optimism comes in. The optimism is, man, this is temporary, and I see myself doing X, Y, and Z after this. And the formula is commitment plus persistence times optimism. Because if there is no optimism, there is zero resistance.
Yeah.
So to your point is, how do you do this? hey, you commit, you realize that it's not gonna be easy, but you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can appreciate all of that. I mean, I think, you know, I tend to be sort of an optimistic person, even in the face of hard stuff. And I see the value in it. I think maybe the reason I am optimistic is because actually has been sort of a survival mechanism in many ways for me. Like, because the other option is to sort of give up, or um, to sort of grind through life in a way that can start to feel almost meaningless, right? If you are moving towards something and you're even trying to be persistent about it, but you really just don't believe it's going to make a difference. I mean, that feels like the ultimate suck in some ways, if you can't see that there's something on the other side for you. So I think, and the fact that you made it a multiplier as opposed to simply another addition shows just how important that is to me. And I think, as you talk about the process and getting there, and even this idea of survival, you know, I believe you've mentioned that there's kind of sort of stages of resilience and survival, maybe as like the first one, and then you kind of move into the other steps. Do you have those other steps that you can share with us?
Yeah, so resilience is usually labeled for people that are in survival mode.
Yeah.
You know, a guy who was in the desert and then they had to go his arm. You know, oh my God, he's
Mm-hmm.
so no,
Yeah.
it's not. He survived. You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And I think that resilience is more than just survival.
Yeah.
The next step for resilience is adaptation. You know,
Mm.
adaptation is, the idea, bouncing back.
Yeah.
It bounce back. That is the typical or the common resilience um, uh, definition, bouncing back.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have learned is that there is another stage that is thriving.
Mm.
And thriving is about getting better, not despite of the issue that you went through, but because of the issue that you're going through.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So think about this way, I mean, sometimes people, ask me questions, a couple of questions, say, you wish you never had a tumor.
Mm-hmm.
What would life would be if you didn't have a tumor? He
Right.
said, and I realized that I am who I am today because I had a tumor.
Mm. Right.
So sometimes the bright future is disguised in the sucking that we have
Yeah.
to endure today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man, that it definitely hits home. I mean, some of the challenges I've had in my life, I believe that. I believe they made me better. And, you know, there's, I had a few health challenges when I was in my 20s, and um, there was definitely a period where I was like, man, I really wish this didn't happen. But now when I look back, I can't even imagine. I don't like, I'm actually like afraid to ponder the concept of who I would be if I hadn't gone through that, you know, and more recent challenges have presented the same kind of opportunity. And I think, that word adaptation in there is really interesting because I think when you're open to that, that's when you sort of crack the door open to the ability to thrive, because you're no longer sort of denying the reality. Maybe in survival mode, you're kind of denying it, but you're like, I still need to, whatever it is, make money, take care of the family, whatever. So I have to at least survive. But the adaptation is when you go, oh, this is me now. And to your point earlier, now what do I do? And that's when you open up the opportunity to actually become somebody better. And I'm curious for you, when you look at that experience, who have you become as a result of this, and what do you love about who you've become as a result?
I consider, I heard this, I don't remember when or where, uh, perfect imperfect.
Yeah.
So I think that I have become a perfect imperfect person. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times the resilience and the journey is never ends. And as long as you're making progress, you are perfect, you're actually making progress.
Yeah.
So the key here is to make sure that we celebrate the small wins, because that gives us the feeling of movement forward.
Yeah.
And that's all we need is momentum. Everybody wants to celebrate the graduation. No, man, before the graduation comes, there is so many classes that we need to take, before we become X, there are so many things that we need to accomplish. So I think we miss a lot of times the present moment for the hope of the future, the future that is completely not real. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I picture like a mirage almost, right? Like in like I'm thinking like an old like Bugs Bunny cartoon or something, and he's in the desert and he pictures some beautiful like body of water showing up and whatever, and all kinds of food showing up, and it's not real, right? It is a sort of perfect but not imperfect. It's this unachievable thing.
It's not real now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that is our goal, that is our direction, our compass, you want to call it,
Yeah.
But there are many things that happen before we get there, and missing those moments is not good, because then, as I said, we thrive when we feel that there is progress. So we need to find ways of proving ourselves that we're moving forward through that direction.
Yeah. And what I find interesting, and I don't know why this is, but I think we're sort of wired to miss those moments, meaning so often we don't give ourselves any credit for the smaller achievements along the way. We just think, well, I just did it. I don't know. And, and so we don't celebrate them. So what can we do? Is it simply setting that attention and making a commitment to doing it? Or is there some rewiring we really need to undergo to start to notice, give some credit, take some appreciation, and actually celebrate?
So I think that, resilience is it's a lifestyle that we need to be intentional. You see? And resilience is I call it, it's like insurance. You pay little by little, because when you're gonna need it, you hope to be there. So what I mean by that is that if you think about this, we all do things that are, what is the word? That are not in our. Let me rephrase this. We all are doing things all the time that are not within our comfort zone. We do that, man. We start a new recipe, we're gonna we're gonna travel business, and we've never been in that place. We do this. What I call it ordinary resilience, because we do all of those things. What we need to do is to tap it into a framework that allows us to build the resilience that we already have. By that is that, one thing that I do every now and again is I give myself challenges. Like every month I give myself a challenge. For 1 month I decided to do 100 push-ups a day. Last year I gave up alcohol for a year. This year I gave up coffee for a year, and that was hard. I'm still. September is the day that I start drinking coffee again.
Okay.
years ago, I decided that I was going to give up shopping for myself for a year. So, and if you do all those challenges, but you tie to resilience and you tie to adaptation, then you're resilient. You see what I'm saying? You become much more because you're intentionally putting yourself in areas of discomfort.
Yeah. So, a couple thoughts there. One is, as you just described it, it almost sounds like another form of like working out. Like you're building a muscle by making a choice to stretch yourself a little bit. And then that builds up this reserve that's there for you. And then there's this other piece, which is a little bit of like simply, I don't know if it's just like noting when you're already doing it. Meaning you mentioned like, oh, I learned a new recipe, or, I went running and instead of doing 2 miles, I did 2.5 miles or whatever, like something like that. Like instead of just treating that as like, whatever, like actually recognizing it.
Absolutely.
And that somehow like cements it in your muscle memory so that when a bigger thing shows up, you have the reserves.
Not only the reserves, but also the memory. That you have gone through something like that, through hard things, and you came up. Like if you think about this, we've done very hard things in our lives. We all, So embracing that as a sign of how resilient we are, embracing it as we can make a commitment to do these things. Embrace the fact that going through that class or going through that work was hard. I require persistence. Yes, you did it, but look where I am now.
Yeah. I like that focus on the memory, like, because then you believe it. Yeah. I have a question for you about those pillars you mentioned, because you mentioned the first pillar, embrace the suck. I think you said there's five total. So I'd love to just, explore what those are, and maybe see how they show up for us. So what's the next pillar after embrace the suck?
Embrace the suck is face your fears. And again, like embrace the suck is use a fear as a goalpost. So in embrace the suck, as I said, my mantra was, what are you gonna do about this? In face the fear is about, we don't want to be fearless, we want to fear less. So the minute we start doing the things that we're afraid of, we become less and less afraid. And the key here is do it in a way that is, that is safe, in a way that is, you feel a little bit less comfortable, but it's moving forward. Yeah.
Obviously there must have been fear for you when you were started experiencing the brain tumor. Are there other instances in your life where that ability to face your fears has shown up for you?
Think about this. One thing, I'm a solopreneur. I have a small, coaching company, and one of the things that I have to do is ask for referrals, business development or not. And my rejection was horrible. It still is, it still is. And I think that the one thing that I read a book and then I listened to a podcast, I don't remember, but it was about, the idea that you can put yourself in rejection instances to build a muscle.
Okay.
So what I did is I started doing things that were funny, but at the same time, I was sure that I was going to be rejected.
Yeah.
One of them are asking my wife to do the dishes. Funny as it sounds, it works. I will go to McDonald's and ask for a refill and a burger. That way, you start, building that muscle, and now I don't have problem calling somebody that I don't know.
That's really interesting. I love that you made it sort of fun and funny. I mean, making sure I understand this. You asked for a refill on a burger. I mean, I think, what's beautiful about that is that it sort of feels so outlandish that it gives you permission to do it, which then still builds the muscle of like, okay, people are pretty much going to say no to those kinds of requests.
And then you move the stakes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's a very fear. The next one is about build relationships.
Okay.
And I think that I look back and I look at all the pivotal moments of my life, and I can point out that all of those pivotal moments have been facilitated by one person. Somebody challenged me, somebody pushed me, somebody gave me an opportunity, somebody helped me, or if somebody criticized me, So I think that sometimes we tend to let relationships happen, and we should be more strategic about building those relationships. And I think that a lot of times, we are spend too much time solving problems when we should be mimicking solutions. Because it doesn't matter what problem you have, somebody out there already solved it.
Okay.
One thing that I have realized is that a lot of times we don't want to lose face because we want to solve the problem when we can just go and ask for help. So that build relationships. The other one is find your inner strength.
Okay.
And I think that we all have a superpower. We all do. We just need to find it. We just need to see what it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also have to build what we already have. And, my wife tells me, go exercise because you're a better husband when you're tired.
Okay.
And it's true. I mean, I find peace on that, on exercising. My superpower, according to my clients, is that I am a compassionate interrogator. Somebody told me, you de-escalate like a motherfucker.
I like that.
Somebody told me you give people hope. So the key here is sometimes we don't know what a superpower is.
Yeah.
We need others to know ourselves. You see? Because in my mind, I am resilient and that's my superpower. That's not what people see in me. So I think that the key here is find your superpower. Is the only way you can do that is if you ask people, what is it that I do well?
Yeah.
Because if you do that more often, you're more intentional about that, then you will build your own brand, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So that's number 4. And one is solve for fulfillment.
Okay.
So remember, when I was telling you that, when I was thinking about committing suicide, an image of my mom appeared, and I told her, and I said to myself, I cannot do this to her. And I think that a lot of times we are too in our own heads and thinking that what we do affect us all by ourselves only, affect us only us. It doesn't. And solve for fulfillment means to me is that anything that I do has implications for other people out there. Parents, my workmates, my wife, so solve for fulfillment is what is it that I do in service of? Because I do that, then I am more driven to actually go forward with it. Because if it was just for myself, might as well you kill myself, and then nobody's gonna miss it. Right. But I think we all have significance to other people, and we need to find that significance and the purpose that will allow us to do things in service of. Because that is what fulfillment is.
That's really a beautiful way of describing fulfillment. And I think it runs counter to much of what you'll see on self-help shelves and books, which fulfillment can very often be much more of a navel gazing, looking at ourselves and going, what do I need to feel fulfilled, as opposed to a looking out there and like saying, what can I put into the world to serve others, which will actually come back to me in the form of fulfillment. It's such a different perspective. And even as you say it, there is some kind of, I want to say a release or a weight that gets lifted when you think of it that way. To put all this pressure on ourselves, I need to find what fulfills me. It sort of brings you in and kind of crushes you. But when you go, I need to figure out, how do I serve others and what can I bring to others? Like, my whole posture changes just thinking about it. And it sends you into this, like, I'm ready to go move and do things. And I love that. I also really love, like, as you described, how they all really feel like they build on each other. I mean, it's clear, like you talked about finding your inner strength, and that was about, connecting with others and asking them what you do that is, helpful or useful. And well, that requires building relationships where, that are trusted, where you can get the kind of the answers that you need. And to build those relationships, you need to face your fears and put yourself out there to be vulnerable enough with people that those relationships are really rooted. And I think all of that probably starts with the idea of embracing the suck and just realizing, like, this is all going to be kind of hard, but I can move through it. And then by the time you get to solve for fulfillment, it's like, okay, I have created a foundation where I can start to believe that I can serve. Because I think that's a challenge for many of us, is that if you say, how can you serve others? You might, if you don't have that belief in your inner strength, I don't know. Maybe I don't matter, So it's a powerful framework. I want to spin it a little bit towards the world of work. And I'm curious, because a lot of these examples have been personal, but you did mention, for your example, that you coach some pretty high profile folks who are also not easy to coach, right? And how does this framework around resilience and the sort of formula you mentioned earlier, how do you bring that to people, and what does it change within both the leaders you coach and then by extension the organizations that they work with?
So the framework of resilience is the way I see it is, and I love how you describe it. They build on each other, but doesn't necessarily happen to be that way. In fact, the way I see it is that they are almost independent from each other.
Okay.
And I think that we all need one or the other at one point.
Okay.
And so what I do with people, and I go in there and try to figure out what is it they're doing, and look, what is it that they're missing? Do they find in the purpose? Do they miss in the relationship building? Do they miss in embracing the challenge or embracing the self? And then I coach them through that. It's very rare that I tell them, this is the framework that we're going to use.
Right.
They want, most people don't want frameworks. They want, can you help me?
Yeah.
So as I said, and if I look at those 5 things, 5 pillars, one of those is going to solve your problem.
Does that mean that in general, most of us are doing okay on the others? Meaning we tend to, like, it's almost, I'm again equating it to like working out, but like maybe we're skipping leg day, or we're not working our back muscles as much.
Absolutely. We are so busy at work. Yeah. We are always in adaptation mode or survival mode.
Yeah.
What we need to do is to move to thriving. Okay, so what are the challenges that I have here right now that will allow me to become better?
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with an executive, and she was saying, I mean, I'm doing my boss's job. Oh my God, she dumps on me. And I said to her, what a glorious opportunity of doing things that are beyond your pay grade. This only will allow you to build your skills for this company or in the future.
How did she respond to that?
She was like, it's like, yeah, but I said, forget about the person. Forget about what are you going to learn and how do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
The problem a lot of times, the problems that I see a lot of times, we try to solve for the unsolvable. And what that is, like, oh my God, my boss is a toxic individual. He doesn't see what I do. We try to solve for that.
Right.
When we should be trying to solve it, okay, how can I show my work? How can my work be much, much more visible? So solve for visibility, that's what you're looking for. Rather than acknowledgement from your boss. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of times that's the work that I do is, okay, what is it that I'm trying to solve here? What is the problem that you need to invest your energy in?
Yeah. And is that ultimately rooted in sort of the outcome that they're desiring in that moment? Meaning if I view my boss as toxic, I want to fix them. The reason I want to fix them is because I believe that by fixing them, I will achieve something that I'm currently not, right?
It's not about fixing them. You want to fix the relationship that person has with you, that have with you. And, sometimes you can, sometimes you don't. But the idea is embracing the suck.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, there is another old saying, you can control the rain. You cannot control the rain, but you can control if it gets wet or not.
Yeah.
So that's one. The other element that I think that I've seen is that people see things as, this is the end of the road. I need to fix this or I won't move forward. Yeah. I need to do this or that. And I think that the other element that we can add is, I can do this and move in this direction. And this other direction. The way I say it, people, like, we have three options usually. Let's find those three options. By the way, not doing anything is one option.
Yep.
What else is there? And the minute, we start looking for options, then people are more empowered to take those options. Because as I said, I mean, at the beginning is, people, when there is a zero optimism, there's zero resilience.
Yeah.
And that options give you optimism, that you can control, that you can navigate the situation. Sometimes it's like, that's it. This is the problem. And if we don't solve this, that my career is over. No, it isn't. See it. And what options are there?
Yeah, it seems like you're saying that the creation of options, especially by myself, as opposed to somebody giving them to me, it opens my eyes to see a different future possibility, and that can create optimism about, oh, I like that future possibility. Now let me do the things that get me there, as opposed to wishing that things just changed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or trying to solve the problem that you cannot solve.
Yeah.
Trying to fix your toxic boss.
Right.
That's my job.
Yeah, and I like how you approach it, right? Because I think for whatever reason, our instinct is often to solve the unsolvable, right? Yeah. If I think of it as like, if only this person were this way, if only the company was this way, if only the industry were this way, if only the world were this way, right? As opposed to recognizing, like, okay, it's not that those things couldn't change, but is that I could spend a lifetime trying to get somebody to become less toxic. What can I do that has more impact today?
I have 3 questions that I ask clients when they're facing the situation. Number 1 is this your problem to solve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Number 2 is, do you need to solve it now?
Mm-hmm.
And number 3 is, do you need to solve it alone or by yourself?
Mm.
You know,
yeah,
that starts opening the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
People say, I need to solve this. No, do you need to solve it now?
Yeah.
Can you do it by yourself? No. And going back to the relationship, we're always trying to solve problems, and we should be mimicking solutions and creating alliances that can actually have the same problem that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there is a belief that we often have that asking for help is a sign of weakness.
Yeah. Well,
and I don't know where that comes from, if it's just societal, evolutionary, whatever, but it traps us in this thing of like constantly forcing things as opposed to looking around. And to your point, somebody else may already know how to solve this problem. So why don't we invite them into the room to help us? I want to keep things moving a little bit. I have had a lot of fun asking you questions, and I want to give you just a chance to pose a question to our audience as they've listened to you talk about resilience and the ways this can help us. Do you have a question that we can share for them?
What can you do today? So 2 years from now, you can say that this crisis, this situation, this stuck-in moment that you're going through is the best thing that happened to your career.
I love that question. It will, it almost like has a visceral reaction, which is kind of like resistance to that question in a way, because it's like, how dare you tell me that this is going to feel like something that's really changing me? But I love it. Another question for you. If you could wave a magic wand and, as I would say it, sort of fully desuckify the world of work, or just make the world of work better for people, what does that world look like?
In terms of human behavior, I would like to see people, instead of feeling intimidated, feeling inspired. Instead of feeling jealous, feeling curious. And instead of greedy, compassionate.
Wow. Yeah, I really like the world you're painting there. I also like those are shifts that don't necessarily come like that, right? When you feel jealous, to get from that to curious. I get how you ultimately can get there, but that feels that you got to embrace the suck of that a little bit. Like recognize that you actually have to allow yourself to not be right in that moment. Like, I feel some righteousness when I'm jealous of somebody or I'm judging somebody, and to have to sort of release that, so that
the way I see jealousy and intimidation is signs of what I need to work on.
Yeah.
I'm jealous that you have this incredible podcast, like maybe that's what I need to do. You said, here, as opposed to, I hate you because you have this awesome podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I say those things, I really mean it, because it has a very personal, they're personal for me. Because that's something that I had to adjust in my own thinking.
No, I love that. I think that's ultimately the most powerful stuff for us is the stuff that we had to move through with some difficulty to ultimately arrive at some understanding. Yeah. Well, another question for you, if you're open to it. If you've listened to my podcast at all, you'll notice some sound effects. I am a cat person, and you'll hear meows and other stuff. But other guests have contributed their own sounds, which have ranged from their own animal sounds to something as simple as like a sigh. I mean, so it's run the gamut. Are you up for making a sound for us that we can bring into the show?
Did you know that cats had almost 150 sounds on the repertoire?
Yeah.
So I don't speak cat.
Uh-huh.
I have one personal sound to me, and it has, I don't know if you want to put it in the show, I'm sure they will, but I go, yes, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to, when I say, yes, motherfucker, I got it. I see the opportunity. I see the problem. I see this, so that's something that you will, if you live with me, you will see it more,
Well, you know what I love about that? Not just the sort of unbridled, like, enthusiasm that comes in that, both the physicality of it and the words, but it feels like it connects back to what you mentioned earlier, this idea of celebrating the small wins, the incremental stuff, like that kind of thing. If you're just sitting there going, yes, motherfucker, like that's enough. You do that because you got a good grade on a paper you did in school, or you finished a project that was challenging. That, as I understand it, there is something actually psychological or physiological that happens by doing that and expressing that plants something in you, and it cements the memory of that resilience, so that you can do it when an even bigger challenge comes around. So that's really cool how that kind of brought us back full circle to that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So the last question I have for you, Luis, simply is, where can people find you online and find your book and all that good stuff so that they can learn more of the good stuff you're putting out into the world?
Yeah, so book is, you find it on Amazon or anywhere you buy your online books. I have my LinkedIn profile. I hope that you can, put the link on
Sure.
on the. I respond to every single email that comes my way, and I have a website. It's velascoaching.com.
Okay.
You can find me there. And about the services that I provide, and by the way, I am also a frequent contributor of HBR. So if you search the name on HBR, you will see a bunch of articles there.
Oh, nice.
About the people that I coach and the issues that they have gone through.
Great. Well, I'll make sure I give all that info to people so they can track down whatever excites them the most. Well, Luis, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing vulnerably and openly about both your personal experiences as well as the work you do to help others move through their own challenges. And I am looking forward to hearing what people say about this episode, because I think it's got a ton of really useful stuff for people to not just survive but actually thrive and do what they're meant to do here on the world.
Thank you, TJ. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. And a huge thanks to Luis for bringing a beautiful vulnerability to the show. You can follow Luis on LinkedIn and check out his coaching company site at Velazquez.com, where you can dive deep into the amazing work he does and learn more about his book, Ordinary Resilience: Rethinking How Effective Leaders Adapt and Thrive. If you enjoyed the conversation and would like to dive deep into some of your own challenges at work, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session where we can explore new, desuckified possibilities for your future. Bye, everyone.